Hi everyone and welcome to StudioJake. I of course am your host Jacob Airy. Thank you for joining me today for Comics, Cartoons, and Coffee, where I talk about things that have to do with comics, cartoons, all while enjoying some coffee. Sweet. One of my all-time favorite franchises is of course Star Wars. If you've seen any of my previous vlogs or webisodes or have read my website, you know this to be the case. And so one of the things that's been really hard for me is dealing with how Disney is treating the franchise. It feels like they're more interested in writing fan fiction and shipping characters than actually, making Star Wars like George Lucas was. So where do you go? Like, I know they have The Mandalorian, they have some really cool video games, but where does a Star Wars fan go? I mean, this is a question that Star Wars fans have been dealing with since Return of the Jedi came out in theaters and later on VHS and DVD. Where do we go from here? And we're kind of in the same situation that we were with the sequels, only it feels like a lot more bleak just because of, like I said, Disney's complete mismanagement of the franchise, and with, Kathleen Kennedy recruiting J.J. Abrams and Rian Johnson to try to make the sequel trilogy. They were more concerned about getting high fives on social media than they were about actually telling the story of Star Wars. So where do we go from here? Before I get into that, be sure to like this video and subscribe to the channel, ring that little bell, and leave me a comment in the comment section. I'd love to know what you're thinking. How are you feeling about all this? Because today I want to talk about where Star Wars fans can go. And that is, my friends, to the pages of comic books. That's right. I know you were scratching your head. Wait, comics, cartoons, and coffee? Where is he going with this? Is he going to talk about Clone Wars or Star Wars Rebels or Rise of the Resistance? What's he going to do? No, I'm going to talk about the comic books, because during the age between Return of the Jedi and The Phantom Menace, there was no Star Wars content coming out as far as film and television. Now, apparently George Lucas did have a bunch of projects in development that never really came through, but we got The Phantom Menace, and obviously we had a bunch of video games during this era. But as far as like content where we can go back and see what could have been, what might have been, what should have been, we can go to the comics. And I remember reading the Star Wars comics before The Phantom Menace was even announced, and waiting with anticipation for these series to come out. And in particular, at the time, Star Wars comics were run by Dark Horse Comics, which, does all kinds of great characters, but in particular, they were producing Star Wars. And really, Dark Horse gets a lot of credit for bringing Star Wars back into the forefront of pop culture with their comic books. Now, my first one I'm going to talk about is actually a Marvel comic, and I'll mention that when I get to it. But all the rest of the suggestions I have on here are all from Dark Horse Comics. I want to make this plain from the beginning. This is not a best of list in sort of an artistic sense. This is just my personal favorites. So I'm going to talk about my top 10 favorite Star Wars comics. Now, I'm just going to get the Marvel one right out of the way. Now, this one did come out during the sequel series, but it takes place or the first volume, I should say, takes place in between A New Hope and The Empire Strikes Back, and that is Darth Vader Volume 1. And in this one, it kind of talks about how Vader gets his obsession with Luke Skywalker and how he finds out that Luke Skywalker is his son, that he was the pilot that destroyed the Death Star. He is, the Force is strong with this one. I can't do a Darth Vader voice. That's not happening. James Earl Jones, you are the GOAT. Anyway, it's really cool because Darth Vader, he's going through this whole thing. He's been given command of the fleet after Tarkin dies, and so he's trying to track down these rebels that destroyed the Death Star. Now, in the original expanded universe, how Darth Vader found out Luke Skywalker was the pilot was he actually tortured a rebel soldier to get the information with his chokehold. And I'm just laughing because it's a nervous laughter. It wasn't a funny scene at all. It was really sad. And this one, what happens is he actually hires Boba Fett to find out who it was, and so Boba Fett does this, and it also showing how Darth Vader is like getting this growing hatred of the Emperor. And then there's this really great scene where Boba Fett comes to Darth Vader and he's like, "Hey, sorry, but I failed to capture the pilot." And so Darth Vader's like, "Give me a reason why I shouldn't kill you." And Boba Fett's like, "Well, I did learn the pilot's name." And Darth Vader goes, "What's his name?" And Boba Fett goes, "Luke Skywalker." And Vader just goes silent. And Boba Fett's like, "Okay, well, see you later," and just kind of leaves. And then Darth Vader has a flashback to when the Emperor tells him in episode 3, you killed your wife in anger and the baby's probably died. And so then Vader kind of whispers, "Luke." And then he's staring out a window and the window cracks. It's like one of the most well illustrated scenes in this series, but I highly recommend that one. Like I said, I'm not a fan of the Marvel stuff post the sequel trilogy, but this first volume at least. Now I don't know about the rest of the series, so don't hold me to volume 2 and 3. I think they're up to 4 at this point, but the first volume is actually pretty good. It actually is really well written and has good illustration. Now with that out of the way, we're going to talk about the Dark Horse expanded universe of Star Wars comic books. All right, first on the list is Star Wars Infinities. Now, this one is actually really cool. They do a New Hope, Empire Strikes Back, and Return of the Jedi, but they do kind of this what if series. And one of them is, what if Luke Skywalker didn't listen to Obi-Wan and used his targeting thing, so he actually fails to destroy the Death Star. And it follows the story from there. It goes in this completely different direction. It's really crazy. And it's kind of like that with each one. There's always like a moment where they have something break off from the story. And in one of them, Leia actually becomes a villain. She becomes Darth Vader's apprentice, and he doesn't even know that she's his daughter at this point. But it's a really great kind of what-if story. It takes the franchise in a totally new direction. And the Return of the Jedi one is actually kind of cool because it has a throwback to the prequel trilogy as far as Darth Vader realizing that C-3PO is his creation. Because, that was one of the big questions. Now, there are, a gazillion protocol droids in the Star Wars universe, but prequel haters always get bogged down in this, why doesn't Darth Vader recognize C-3PO? Like, oh my gosh, that's so annoying. There's a gazillion protocol droids. Oh, I'm sorry he didn't recognize this one protocol droid. Get over it. And also C-3PO has been through like 4 shells. In the first one, he didn't even have a shell. The second one, he was gray. Third one, he was gold, and then by the time you get to the original trilogy, he's kind of like not even glossy until the end of A New Hope. So why would Darth Vader know who 3PO is? Oh, my producer, my super cute wife, she just gave me another point. Why would Darth Vader care about this droid? That's a really great point. He's evil now. Why would he care? That's a great point. See, this is why she is my producer now. She holds me to these kind of truths. All right, so up next, this is probably one that a lot of fans are familiar with. This is the Dark Empire trilogy. So sometimes Dark Horse would kind of complement the novels that were going on, what's called the expanded universe, but other times they would diverge. And that's what this did with Dark Empire. In this one, you find out that the Emperor, kind of like in Rise of Skywalker, he's got clones all over the galaxy, and he's like using the Force to push himself into like younger clones, and each time he gets more and more powerful. So actually Luke actually sides with the Emperor, so not for any reason to become a part of the dark side, but just so he can have the opportunity to defeat the Emperor. And it's actually this really well-written series. It's really well designed, and it's got some great artwork in it. I think now Dark Horse has it as a traded paperback. They have what's called omnibus editions, and I think they have an omnibus edition of Dark Empire series, and I highly recommend it. It's probably one of my favorites from Dark Horse. So next we have Tales of the Jedi, and Tales of the Jedi is really cool. It does a lot of kind of the pre-Golden Age of the Republic stories, so Knights of the Old Republic kind of things. They have all kinds of stories that branch off. They do the war with the Sith and how the Rule of Two came about, similar to the novels, but they kind of have their own spin to them. This is one of the most long-running series from Star Wars that Dark Horse did, and it was just fantastic. They really expand on sort of that lore from the Old Republic. This is one of my favorites that takes place actually during the prequels. It takes place in between episode 2 and episode 3, and it's General Grievous, and I freaking love this story. For one thing, it is written by one of the greatest comic book writers of all time, Chuck Dixon, yes, the co-creator of Bane. You know, you saw him in The Dark Knight Rises. But anyway, it was you can kind of tell that Chuck Dixon is the co-creator of Bane because General Grievous kind of acts like Bane in this comic book series. It's really great. Basically, this Jedi apprentice, his master gets killed by General Grievous, and he actually gets assigned a new Jedi master. Even though he's just faced one of the most dangerous men in the Star Wars galaxy, he doesn't get promoted. He gets assigned a new master, but he doesn't want to go with her, and he chooses to go with a group of rogue Jedi who just want to assassinate Grievous, which the Jedi Council forbids, by the way, because they think that these assassinations are, a dark side move, not really what the Jedi are about. But they go anyway, and it leads to some crazy battles, and it's probably one of, as far as focusing on a singular villain like General Grievous, it really does a good job of expanding his lore. Up next is called The Star Wars. So what is The Star Wars? It was Dark Horse taking the rough draft of A New Hope and expands upon it. So in this one, Darth Vader is not Luke's father. Anakin is a young teenager, kind of like how you see him in the prequels, but instead of being the father of Luke, he's actually the apprentice of Luke. Oh, and Han Solo is an alien that kind of resembles Swamp Thing. He's not a human. It's got all these crazy mixed in kind of stuff, and it's very different, but also kind of the same. When you think about it, you can tell how George Lucas was building. I actually told Kelly Campagna, who follow her channel, Warrior Woman 91. I actually told her once that I really felt like the sequel should have been used as should have used this comic as a template, because it has an older Luke Skywalker as opposed to Obi-Wan training Luke. This was Luke training Anakin and whatnot. It was very different. The characters are all mixed place. Leia isn't Luke's sister, kind of like she's not in A New Hope. You can kind of tell they're not really brother and sister until The Empire Strikes Back. But anyway, it's just kind of a really cool reading it in that kind of proto-Star Wars with what was going on in George Lucas's head. And you can kind of tell he is an evolving artist. He always says he likes to upgrade and move forward, and that's kind of like how it was between the original trilogy and the prequels. You definitely see how he wants to move forward with technology as far as filmmaking and whatnot. So I highly recommend checking out The Star Wars. So up next we have Honor and Duty, and this kind of starts out a little before episode 2, and then it goes into after Revenge of the Sith, and it follows this Senate guard who, this poor fellow just can't catch a break. He's like a very loyal Senate guard, and a senator gets murdered. He gets tagged into the investigation, and then he's there with Obi-Wan and Anakin. And so they're guarding another senator that might be targeted. And his son, he wants him to become a Senate guard, but the son is angsty and kind of a brat and doesn't want to. And then it just follows his career as he watches Palpatine just slowly get his clutches in on Coruscant and create the Empire. And it's really good perspective coming from sort of almost that lower tier kind of ranking Star Wars character. Like, you wouldn't think a character like a Senate guard would be interesting, but this was actually a really interesting story, and you getting to see how the Empire took hold from that perspective. Up next, we have Shadows of the Empire. Every real Star Wars fans has read Shadows of the Empire. If you have not read Star Wars Shadows of the Empire, you need to stop what you're doing, get off your butt, and order it right now on Amazon. It is part of the expanded universe. The book is one of the best. It takes place in between, I believe, Empire Strikes Back and Return of the Jedi, and it's about this gangster who also has dealings with the Empire, and this gangster, he's Prince something, I can't remember his name off the top of my head, but he's like in competition with Darth Vader, and he wants to capture Luke Skywalker because he knows the Emperor wants him, and he kind of wants to upstage Darth Vader, which is never, ever a good idea. No one upstages Darth Vader. Anyway, the comic book, Shadows of the Empire, takes place at the same time as the novel, but characters that are secondary characters in the novel, they get expanded upon, because one of the subplots is Princess Leia and Chewbacca and Lando are trying to find Han Solo. They're trying to track down Boba Fett. And so part of the comic book is Boba Fett trying to stay away from the Millennium Falcon. It's actually a really good story. It's a really good comic book. Get both. Get the graphic novel. I think it is in a collected form. Get the graphic novel and also the novel and read them together. It kind of shows you what happening from both sides of that, and it's a really excellent story. One of the most well written stories. You need to get your hands on it. Next is Jango Fett. So Jango Fett follows the career of the famous bounty hunter who is the father of Boba Fett, and kind of shows the events leading up to episode 2. It's really good. It's more episodic. Some of these comics have like more longer arcs that take place over time. Jango Fett is more episodic in nature. There are a few arcs, but they're shorter, not as long. I would highly recommend it. I think it's really good, especially seeing kind of that underworld part of Star Wars. Last, but definitely not least, we have Union. What is Union? Union has a character that for some reason Kathleen Kennedy thought was a good idea to completely ignore altogether. It has Mara Jade Skywalker. Who is Mara Jade Skywalker? She is the wife of Luke Skywalker. She was actually originally in the expanded universe. She was one of Palpatine's secret apprentices that she was going to kind of be raised up to challenge Darth Vader. Palpatine had her as a sleeper agent at some point, and she didn't even know the Emperor had been defeated. And then she finds out he does, and she gets angry, and she wants to get Luke Skywalker, get him in revenge. But then they are forced to work together, yada yada yada. And then one thing's in the other, and they fall in love and get married, yada yada. And Union is specifically about their wedding and about the events leading up to their wedding. And of course, in true Star Wars fashion, nothing goes according to plan. And it kind of builds up to this point. And it's really good. It's really exciting. And, don't worry. It's not like the Tom King wedding issue of Batman, where Batman doesn't get married. It actually shows the union, the thing of the wedding coming together, and Luke Skywalker being happy marrying someone like Mara Jade, who kind of knows where he comes from and understands, and her struggle with going from using the dark side of the Force to the light side of the Force and kind of becoming a Jedi Knight in her own right. It's really good. It was before Disney decided to make all their female characters Mary Sues. In this case, Mara Jade, actually, you get to see her struggle with the light side and the dark side, of course, her being one of the Emperor's apprentices. So it's really exciting, it's really good, and I highly recommend it. Okay, that's all the time we have for today. Thank you so much for listening. And hey, if you liked a particular arc or series from the Star Wars comics, leave me a comment. Tell me what you think. Of course, like I said before, be sure to like this video, subscribe, share it out, tell all your friends about me. Also, you can follow me on Twitter, Parler, and Instagram. They're all at Real Jacob Airy, so you can find me there. Also, find me on Facebook. It's author Jacob Airy. And of course, head over to my website for more pop culture commentary, StudioJakeMedia.com. Thank you so much for listening, and I'll see you next time right here on Studio Jake.